Hello, you're watching CBC News Network. I'm Linda Ward. We begin with another mid-air incident that's left multiple people injured today. It happened on a Qatar Airways plane flying from the Middle East to Dublin. CBC's Albert Delatala is looking into what happened.
Well, Linda, we're told 12 people were injured when that Qatar Airways flight hit turbulence on its way to Dublin. And the airport does say that it landed safely and on time, but certainly some scary moments there. Let's show you on a map just where it happened. The airport confirms the Qatar Airways flight hit turbulence while airborne over Turkey. The incident reportedly lasting less than 20 seconds, according to passengers, and happened during the food and drinks service on the plane. 6 passengers and 6 crew reported injuries. You can see some of the scenes there after that plane safely landed, meeting emergency crew when it did on the ground. Here are some passengers who spoke to Irish public broadcaster RTE after they got off the plane.
Food all over the plane, on the ceiling, everywhere. This managed to happen.
Just going over Baghdad, we just felt the plane dip for about 5 seconds, and next to us we saw the flight attendant just go up in the air and come straight back down.
The plane fell. The flight attendant, the poor flight attendant, went into the air. Food went everywhere. And then obviously it was like seatbelts on. There was panic, the look of panic everywhere.
The airline calls the injuries minor and said that those who were injured are receiving medical attention. It didn't directly comment on the turbulence, but it did say that an internal investigation is happening into that incident.
Sounds like a pretty harrowing incident for sure, according to the passengers on that flight. And it also sounds like, we're hearing about these things more frequently lately. This comes just days after a fatal incident on a Singapore Airlines flight. Tell us more about that. Yeah, that was on Tuesday at Singapore Airlines flight, and that flight hit severe turbulence on its way to Singapore from London. A 73-year-old British man died of a suspected heart attack after that incident. You can see just some of the scenes on that plane after all of that. 20 people sent to the ICU after that incident as well. The U.S. Transportation Safety Board says turbulence is the most common kind of airplane incident, and that most of those incidents result in one or more serious injuries. One airline safety analyst says turbulence is becoming more common with climate change, and that airlines are adjusting their planes accordingly.
Over the last 20 years, in particular, aircraft are fitted with far more sophisticated radar called multi-scan, which, as I mentioned, gives a really good picture of what the weather is like ahead. They're also making progress into turbulence detection as well. And also airlines are now sharing data between aircraft of encounters with turbulence, so everybody can be advised that's on that same flight track.
In terms of that Singapore Airlines incident, the airline says that it is fully cooperating with investigators on the investigation there. And that plane had actually returned to Singapore today from Bangkok, where it made that emergency landing. Many of the passengers remain in Bangkok, where they are being treated for their injuries. Linda.
CBC's Albert Delatala. And Keith Mackey is a former airline pilot and an aviation expert. He spoke with us about mid-air turbulence and how best to protect yourself.
Well, apparently they were serving meals because 6 of the injured were the flight attendants, and they would have been up walking about the cabin to get the meals out. The other 6 passengers that were injured, I would wager, were not fastening their seat belts. If this turbulence occurs, and it can happen very suddenly without any warning at all, if you're not strapped in, there's a good chance you're going to get brain or upper spinal injuries. So even though the seatbelt sign is off, while you're seated, keep that belt fastened, not loosely fastened as they recommend, but keep it firmly fastened. Because if you're in a car wreck, you wouldn't want to have a loosely fastened seatbelt holding you in. And I think if everyone was strapped in, we would not have had any injuries among the passengers.
The turbulence specifically that they hit, are there any clues that you can glean from what we're hearing about this flight, about what this airplane encountered?
Well, here's the situation. If you have known turbulence, for example, if you're flying through an area where there are thunderstorms, well, you know the storms are there, you turn the seatbelt sign on, you warn the people what to expect. Usually there's some turbulence associated with it to assure them that it's not for not turning the seatbelt sign on. And when you get through, you can turn the sign off. Now, this clear air turbulence has no warning, so you don't know when to turn the seatbelt sign on. If you leave it on all the time, people are going to ignore it. They're going to get up and walk about the cabin anyway, or use the restroom. So you can expect that the seatbelt sign won't be on, more than likely, when you encounter this unexpected turbulence.
Yeah, if you can't see it coming, this clear air turbulence, as a pilot, what can you do beyond kind of quickly turning that seatbelt light on?
Well, by then it's too late. We have speeds called turbulence penetration speeds. And if we had anticipated the turbulence, we could have slowed the airplane to that particular speed. But because there's no warning, we can't do anything. Once the turbulence occurs, turning on the seatbelt sign is really too late. Folks don't have time to fasten their belts to get to their seats.
We had a pretty similar incident, but even more severe earlier this week. A man dying of suspected heart attack, dozens injured during severe turbulence in a flight to Singapore. Given that these incidents happened just days apart, and we've heard of recent incidents that are similar as well, how do you think this is all affecting the public's perception about flight safety?
Well, you're going to incur a certain amount of clear air turbulence as well as normal turbulence. If you fasten your seatbelt, it's probably not going to bother you. It's the folks that didn't do that got injured. And so it's easy to prevent injury. And that's the main takeaway from this, is the passengers have to be prepared at any time to anticipate sudden turbulence.
Aviation expert and former airline pilot Keith Mackey.